It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 do.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Spirit Cafe, or good morning or good evening, depending where you're from. I'm Barbara Schreiner Trudell,
And I'm Cheryl Rogers.
and we are best sister friends from different mothers, different continents, and we both live in Ontario right now. So that is awesome. Just want to begin with the land acknowledgement, and it is my honor to work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and more recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Haudenosaunee nations. Toronto is home to many diverse First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. So we recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. And the Indigenous name for Toronto is Toronto. Toronto. I can't quite get it, but I'll work on it. We are one. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Well, Miss Cheryl, this has been a week in the news.
Yep, lots going on.
Mhm. Guns, guns, guns. What
Yeah.
good comes from that, right? But
Unfortunately.
ultimately, like you said before the show, consciousness creates. So where's our consciousness at the moment? So we have two stories that are from this week in the U.S. And one is having on the weekend an LGBTQ like gay nightclub shot up, 5 people dead, another 18 or so injured. The gentleman has been arrested, a 22-year-old, and then yesterday a Walmart.
Yeah, Walmart employees. It hasn't been confirmed. It's not official yet, but apparently the manager went into a room where staff were meeting and shot 6 staff. I believe 6 are dead and others injured.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't help, I mean, I know we've been going through challenging times, but throughout history, there's challenging times. There's always bumps in the road. What astounds me is what it would take to snap like that.
Mhm.
Like, what has to be in your heart that you would go out and choose to murder people at random? And I mean, maybe the Walmart one isn't a random one.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, he knew those people, and but the
Well,
one on Saturday night, right, in the gay
Yeah.
club, it's like, what?
Well, I think, I think those kind of things probably do happen at random, because it even if it was targeted with people, it still shows that there are some underlying issues that drove a person to do that.
Exactly.
And so for me, what it highlights for me is the systemic issues that have not been addressed, that have never been addressed.
Yes.
The consciousness that we are currently living with because of what we as a collective have created. And so when people, I understand when people come forward, and I think about it too. The first thought for me is like better gun control. There needs to be things put in place, and then I go to a place of, my goodness, we are so controlled as it is,
Yeah,
right?
we are.
And so yes, possibly that's one area that could be, and another area that we can be less controlled. But again, like you said, it's a state of consciousness, and that's what needs to shift. And I think the only way one of the ways, I won't say the only way, but is addressing systemic issues.
Yeah, I agree. When I look at things like uh, the racism issues, the bullying within schools, the even the inequity of so many things, where so many people are living below the poverty line in both countries. This is a gentleman who was in the nightclub that on Saturday night that got shot up. When you look at the rights of women in the US, I mean, Roe versus Wade being overturned, and then you look at LGBTQ rights. I was reading something today where this year alone, 238 bills have been put forward by state lawmakers to limit the rights of LGBTQ Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Like that to me that's one that I really struggle with,
Yeah.
because when I think about just like that picture we saw at the beginning with all the flowers and everything, love, over hate or whatever it was, the idea of love is the answer, right? Like the whatever is going on, right? And hate comes from training, it comes from indoctrination, and
Yeah.
it comes mainly from fear. And I know we have talked a lot about inclusivity, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people will talk about inclusivity, and then but only to the degree that it doesn't interrupt the comfort
Mm-hmm.
of us, right? Like I'm really inclusive until.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we begin to really get the idea that there's only one thing going on and we're all a part of it? So you and I are connected. Fiona, you're in Geneva, we're still connected, right?
Yeah.
There's one thing happening, and we act like somebody can take something from us, but ultimately whatever we put out comes back.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm being abusive and hateful and fearful, that's the energy that I'm creating from. And what are the answers? Anybody in the chat want to tell us the answers to this?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Put
it's
down your thoughts and feedback. Yeah. It's interesting because I've been watching, different shows on Netflix and Gaia. I have a friend who shares her Gaia account with me, so I'm so grateful because, yeah, Gaia Gaia has a lot of shows, about topics that are not part of the normal media and conversation, right?
yeah,
Science and spirituality coming together, ETs, life in other universes, all kinds of things, which I just love, right?
yes,
You
yes,
know,
me too.
yeah. So, but one of the things that I heard in one of the interviews was, when you think about it, we are a warring society.
Yes,
And if you look back at history,
yeah,
we have always been, right? This
yeah,
has been, there's always been war and conflict and
absolutely.
greed and othering and, all those kind of things. And so if we're looking at evolution, we need to get out of that consciousness as a
Yes,
whole society, not just a country, a community, but as a collective.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what I've noticed too is, I mean, I know you and I talked last week about, or 2 weeks ago, I don't know, about death and dying. And, just watch what happens when somebody dies.
Mm,
And the family who are meant to love one another start fighting over whatever's left.
exactly. Yeah.
It's like, why do we have to fight?
Yeah.
Why can't we just split it and walk away? Like, why is there a battle going on?
And the
Why
hurt
does
and the
one person,
harm
yeah,
that gets caused from that in relationships, right? I mean,
yeah,
to me, that's what it's all about, is focusing on relationships,
yeah,
focusing on connection.
yeah,
It's our values are very skewed, and these are things that we've been taught. These are things that we've
Absolutely.
learned.
Yeah.
And so it's like we need to be able to unlearn and to create something different. But I do believe that there is hope in the younger generations. I see that they have different values.
Yes.
They have the different focus. They're not as influenced, I believe, by everything they see and hear. So I think that's that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. And I like Fiona's comment. We live in circles of communities and need to remember our unity with humanity. I think that's where the big disconnect is we've really bought into the idea of separation, them and us.
Mm-hmm.
But when we start to realize that we're all interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
when we get that, that changes things.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, being abusive to somebody is a little harder to even consider.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because that's exactly it, Fiona. We talk about having to, if we want to see the change, we need to be the change. And so that starts with us, but then it does go into our circle of community. If each person in that circle does the same thing, how powerful is that? And then if another circle that is connected with that circle, that's how things can grow and expand and change, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because change starts here. It's each one of us choosing something different. And I think when we look at the gun violence, we look at bullying in schools. Here we have more stabbings, I think, than we have guns. There's gun violence here, but I think it's more knives. So, I
And
mean,
that's
there's a
because
whole,
guns are not as accessible.
they're
You
not as
know,
accessible here
the
in
UK
Canada.
has a huge, huge knifing problem, crime with knives, murder, and that's because they don't have access to guns as easily.
And so we've got all of this fear, because I think people act out like this because of fear. Someone else is infringing on their beliefs or their values, or their ideas of what's right and wrong. I can go kill a transgender person because I don't believe that that should be okay. All of these very odd ideas about life and living and who has a right to being considered human. I mean, look at what we've done with Indigenous people and the Black community. It's like we separate. We just keep
Mm.
dividing, but ultimately we're not able to.
Mhm.
Like, it's an illusion. The division is an illusion.
Well, again, it's all learned, right?
Yeah,
Racism is learned. It's from what we are taught. Um,
exactly.
Prejudice, biases, all those kind of things we learn from the environment that we grow up in.
Exactly.
And so, until we realize that we could be doing things differently,
Yeah.
and could be learning from our mistakes, it's going to take a while. It's just going to take as long as it takes.
Well, I think, the key and, sort of the reason we started this show was to talk about things that, sometimes don't get talked about, like the rights of gay people or the rights of transgender people, even the gender pronouns and stuff. Like, people are upset about pronouns. Well, why be upset? It doesn't affect you. This is the part that kind of baffles me a little bit, is that we will get really invested in what somebody else is doing, even though it has no impact on us.
Yeah.
Like, they're not in our face, they're not part of our family, they're not, showing up at our door, and yet somehow everything that's happening is, it's like, you can't be you because it makes me uncomfortable. And Fiona just said that no child is born inherently prejudiced. Absolutely. Children aren't born with hate.
No.
They are taught it.
Yeah.
They're absolutely taught hate. My husband watched a show a while ago that was I don't know if it was Nazis in America or whatever, but it was a lot of these people who are so against anyone of color, anyone different than white, and how they were raising their children.
Mm.
And the documentary was so horrific. He put it on, I think I watched 2 to 3 minutes, and I just went, I can't. I
Mhm.
can't even watch it. And
Mhm.
he watched it because, again, he wants to understand. For me, it's so hateful that it goes beyond. And then my daughter talked to me about a show that she watched in school, and I think it's called Skin. And that, when I watched that, like, she made me watch it beginning to end, and it was so awful.
Mhm.
This white guy is so abusive to this black man, and then a group of black people grab him and tattoo his whole body.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then his son shoots him thinking he's a black man
I
for
saw
their home.
that. I only now when you're telling the story, I remember that. Yes.
Whew, that
Mhm.
that 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 was
The irony of it, right?
well, and I think that's what I appreciate about that particular film was that they were illustrating that hate is not about anything real.
Mhm.
It's just a fabrication. And we've taught people this, right? Like, his son was taught that,
Exactly.
you've got to fear anyone who has black skin. That was taught to him.
Yeah.
And, you look at that and go, what would I mean, I just keep going back to what would it take for us to begin thinking along lines of creation, possibility, love, peace. I mean, all of those things are possible, but they require that we find a way to get along. And we don't get along in our families. We don't get along in our work environments. We don't get along with our spouse. We don't get
Yeah.
along with our neighbors.
And I think the key is that it requires work.
Yeah,
It requires inner work.
it does.
Not
Yes.
to anyone or for anyone, but for and to ourselves, which is for the better of the collective.
Yeah.
And just talking about it and reading about it and watching things about it is not going to change anything. It's about that awakening that Michael spoke about a few weeks ago, that we
Yeah,
need to be meditating and going within and shifting our own energy field, right? Because that's what
absolutely.
it is. It's energy.
Yeah,
Everything is energy. And if we can create a different energy within ourselves, that energy then, becomes the collective energy and creates a shift in reality. I'm
yeah.
saying reality because what is reality? That's another show.
That's a whole other show. I mean, that's the thing, is that, and even the things we say to our children don't carry as much weight as the behavior that we
Mhm.
exhibit.
Yeah,
So you could say all the right things, but if you behave opposite to that, what your
exactly.
children are going to acknowledge, recognize, and repeat is going to
Mhm.
be what they see you doing. That's going to be a big part of how they move forward in their experience. So we're really we're really in an interesting place where
Mhm.
we are, taking away the rights of people. Not so much yet in Canada, but definitely in the US, with the, the guns is, I don't even understand why they have so many guns and why they fight to keep them. Uh, but, when it comes right down to the whole activity of life and living, I mean, look at this mass shootings.
Yeah.
Look at the map. That's 2022.
Mhm.
It's whatever's going on. It's like we have to come together. And like Fiona said, affirmative prayer is an excellent start with young children to realign their consciousness. I wrote a program for elementary school called We're Connected: Compassion, Kindness, Respect, and showing children and giving them a model, like giving them activities to do
Mhm.
that shows what can be done and what can't be done and how to create that. Because I don't believe in anti-bullying, which we talked about last week,
Yeah.
anti anything. But I do believe in teaching compassion, kindness, respect, and acknowledging that each person is unique and special.
Mhm. Mhm.
That for me is the way we need to train our children,
Yeah.
and to hold them accountable,
Yeah.
no matter what age they are,
Yeah.
if they're doing hateful, hurtful things,
Mhm.
rather than going, well, boys will be boys.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. Absolutely agree with you, Fiona. I was just when you typed that in, I started looking for a message that I received 2 days ago from my daughter-in-law. So I've been looking at books for my grandchildren, children's books from Wayne Dyer, and there's another place called Conscious. I can't remember, but also doing children's books and things like that, like New Thought kind of books. And I sent one of the Wayne Dyer books home with my grandchildren on Friday. And my daughter in law messaged me yesterday and she said, "Hey, that book you sent home with the boys is great. We read it tonight. Great messages."
nice.
Which is, wonderful. And I have two more upstairs. I buy them and I keep them, uh, and then I sort of let them into their space. But what I loved about that was, it was, for me, it was like, yes, because they will not speak to me about spirituality. They will not speak to me, my kids, right, about
Yeah.
my belief systems, that all this kind of thing. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's just because I'm their mother or what it is, but I know other mothers who
Yeah.
are able to talk to their kids about those things. But yeah, they don't get it because they still think that it's religion because it's got a name, or it's, I don't know.
That is so unfortunate, because especially here in Canada, religion is very kind of poo-poo. Most people don't want to hear about religion.
Mhm.
And so there's a confusion of what is spirituality and what is religion. And religion is an organization, where spirituality is an inner experience. And I think, and that experience doesn't have to have any religious words attached to it, right? I can talk about mind being powerful. I can talk about the universe. I can talk about what's back of science. There was an article in Newsweek years ago that science finds God. And the whole article was about these scientists and how, because of what they've proven, the principles they've proven scientifically, the only thing that makes sense is that there's an intelligence back of the universe.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that can make it make sense to them. And, it's fascinating how we believe in electricity, how we believe in the gravity, right? Like, we know these things, we can't see it. We can only see the result of it. And like Fiona mentioned, affirmative prayer. Well, we can't see the effect of a prayer until we see the result of
Mhm.
what it is we've put out. And that result shows us that something is happening. And for me, I'm always astounded by the effect of prayer and how powerful it really is.
Well, I mean, affirmative prayer for me is not just about the prayer itself, but it's about the effect that it has on our body, on our emotions, our
Yes.
feelings. So when we can affirm something and feel that as if it was real and happening right now in the moment, not only are we creating it, because we know that our thoughts, words, and deeds create, but we're also shifting the energy within ourselves,
Absolutely.
right, into a better space. So that's also very powerful in itself.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. It's interesting because you use the word God, right? And we're talking about God as energy, as universe,
Energy.
as frequency, there's different ways of what that means to different people.
Yes.
But that's another, and I'm going to say issue or problem, is because the minute anybody hears the word God, it's like, oh my God, we're talking religion. Well,
Exactly. Yes.
God for us is one power, one presence everywhere. It's not a man in the sky. It's not a being that's saying, you go to the left and you've been good, you can go to the right. It's not what God is.
Well, and that's I think that's an important thing for us to remember, is this universal intelligence, which is the creative impulse, and the way that it moves is from my thinking. And so if I'm thinking positive, affirmative, powerful things, if I'm expecting good results about things, if those are my expectations, they become fulfilled in one way or another, and often way bigger, way better than what we had evenly initially intended.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Fiona just mentioned this network being a great path for children.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
immediately, I've been trying to talk. My husband is a comedic actor, but he works with children a fair bit. And he's so good with them. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he should do a show on here. Like he's just, he's going to be Santa for the next 6 weeks. So he'll be working
Yeah,
with
and
lots of kids with that.
it can even start with reading those New Thought books, right?
I wrote one.
And you wrote one. So there you go. Like there's material that we could be sharing and making it interesting, and,
Yes.
inviting kids to type yes or no. Or, I mean, my grandchild, he's 6 and he's able to read and do that. And
Yep.
when we were going through COVID, I could not believe I was there one day and they were doing school online. He was 5 at the time, or just turned 5. And it was time to go online. He took his computer, sat at his little children's desk, opened it up, signed on to his class, and I was like, oh my gosh.
They're born with an intuitive connection to this stuff, and
Yeah.
it's wonderful to see, because like I watched my great grandson, who's also 6 now, just turned 6 in August, and watching him when he was 2 years old on the iPad, finding his favorite, little song or his favorite video on YouTube. And I'm like, how do you, like, they intuitively, it's like, this is what illustrates consciousness, I think, is what children know at birth.
Mhm.
Right? Like they come in and at 2 or 3 years old, they're on our phones. They can completely run them. I've had my phone for, I don't know, I got an iPhone 12. I've had it for, I don't know, about 2 years, I think. And I still have no idea how to do the majority of things on it, but I can make a call and I can text. So
Mhm.
you, but it's like he gets on there and he's finding all kinds of interesting videos, and whatever he searches for, he's finding really great content. And I'm thinking, you're just a little kid. How do you know this? But
Yeah.
again, consciousness, we are one. So if it's known anywhere, it can be known everywhere.
Yes.
Right? If
Exactly.
somebody knows it, I have the ability to know it. And I actually trained my daughter with this when she was in grade 3, and they were doing standardized tests. And, the teachers go, oh, you got to study, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do the other thing. And she was getting really anxious about this test and how she would do. And I said to her, I said, you don't even have to worry about it. The answers are known.
Mm.
All you have to do is pay attention.
Mm.
All of the answers are already there.
Mhm.
And the other side of it, this is not testing you. This is testing the teachers and what they've been able to teach you. So don't worry about it.
Excellent.
Just relax and go in and do your best.
Yeah.
And I've been telling her that all along. I'm sure in grade 12, she's in grade 12 now. I'm sure there'll be standardized tests this year. And again, I'm going to tell her the answers are already known.
Mhm.
In the mind of the one, everything is there, and you're part of that. So tap in. We have the ability to know.
Yeah. I love that you
So-
said this is not about testing you, it's about testing
Oh,
them.
yeah, it's testing the curriculum and you know, I remember a few years ago when the new sex ed curriculum came in. I went to a meeting, you know, that was explaining the curriculum, and of course the big issue was, you know, we can't teach children about sex. That's evil, bad, awful. Yeah, yeah. They can watch violence on TV, but don't talk about sex.
Yeah, exactly.
And I went to this thing, and I'm listening to one teacher talk about, you know, the curriculum and how it dealt with LGBTQ, transgender, all that kind of stuff, right? And a lot of that got left out because, you know, they didn't want to. So two things came up that really astounded me. One was that the people who would teach the curriculum, phys ed teachers,
Oh,
that's who's teaching the curriculum. Their training on the new curriculum was an online thing that, I don't know, like half an hour or something online, they could get it. And the other thing is they could leave out whatever they wanted because they couldn't possibly teach the entire curriculum, so they could pick and choose. So one of the people presenting was a teacher who was transgender, who had transitioned in his elementary school.
mhm,
Right? So they knew her and him. And he's not teaching it.
mhm.
The phys ed teacher is. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how can you teach something you have no understanding of and maybe you oppose?
Mm,
Maybe you think it's wrong or not, you know, maybe there's something in you that goes, oh, this is all made up, it's weird, you know, whatever it is. Like, how do we begin to give information that is as deep as it could be or as rich as it
mhm,
could be if we're deciding arbitrarily how it's going to be disseminated, and then to turn around and go, you know, well, you don't have to send your kids on this day or that day. We can, yeah, like, there was just a whole bunch of stuff around it that I'm going, wow, you know, we're trying to get there. I remember what sex ed was when I was in school. It was
mhm,
only the girls, and it was only about one particular thing, right?
mhm,
Nothing
mhm.
else was covered. We learned about everything on the playground, and what we learned had nothing to do with reality.
Yeah, I think we learned about sexual diseases.
I don't
I
think
think
we
that
did.
was, yeah, I think that was shared, and I'm not sure if
The only
contraception.
thing I learned was about menstruation. That
Oh,
was it.
I didn't learn about that.
Yeah,
I had no
that was in
idea
grade
what was
5 and
going
6.
on. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah. I'm bleeding to death. Well, you know, that's the thing, is the way information is disseminated, it really is conditional upon where you get it. And that's one of the things that always has, you know, astounded me a little bit. You know, if I watch CNN, I get one thing. If I watch Fox News, I get something else. If I watch the CBC or the BBC, I get something again, all the same story, but the presentation of it, the way the information is shared is quite different.
And why is good news no news?
I know.
Right? We
I
have to
know.
like really create a good news uh, channel or online venue to get
News
some
on Media
news.
Network,
Yeah, I think
Friday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, the good news.
there you go, right?
Yeah,
And so that's wonderful that somebody's doing that.
yeah,
Why isn't that part of every day? Why can't we end the news with and the good news?
exactly. Well, and you know, we do this. Reverend Robert does the show on Friday night for half an hour, the good news. But yeah, why don't we do it every day?
Mhm.
And so I get to fill in for him every now and again. He'll email me and say, "Are you available?" And I find it really fun. But sometimes it's hard to find some really interesting good news
Mhm.
because I got to find it online. And, you know, it's like last
Who's
week was a
controlling
little
that?
harder than,
The media, right? The media that's spewing
yeah,
all the other stuff.
exactly. Exactly. And there's some great interest stories out there that are just fascinating.
Mhm.
And it really instills, you know, sort of a great sense of hope it helps to dispel some fear when
Mhm.
we start hearing inspiring stories of teenagers rescuing somebody from a car wreck, or the science has a great breakthrough that's going to assist people who have very uncommon blood types.
Mhm.
Like there's some blood types where there might be two people in an entire country that have
Wow.
that blood. So if they're in an accident, they're in trouble,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's like you look at some of these things and you see these scientific breakthroughs, or a dog that gets lost and then goes to the neighboring police station and turns itself in. It's like some of them are just so heartwarming. And why can't we have more of those? And why can't we have it every day?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I think that would be worth.
Well, and that would be worth showing to children, right?
Yes.
Showing, because that's another area I think we are lacking as a society right now, is children seeing that kind of thing happening in their communities, because
Oh,
it's
yes.
so rare, first of all, and it's not really shared in places that they get to see or experience that.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's all that rare. It's not talked about and it's not shared.
Maybe, yeah.
That's what
When I
I
say
see
rare,
sometimes.
I'm saying rare in their environment for them to see on a
Mhm.
regular basis,
Yeah.
right? So, for example, I had my grandchildren on Friday. It was a PD day. It was wonderful, and I took them for lunch. And we got out of the car, and an elderly gentleman, he's on a motorized like wheelchair or
Mhm.
scooter kind of thing, came to me, and he asked if I could give him some money for a meal, for some food. So the first, I said absolutely, and I didn't have a lot of cash because I don't carry cash. So I had to dig around for, coins, and I had a few toonies and loonies, and I gave that to him. And my two grandchildren just stood there and were like, they were like, this was not something that they see
That they
regularly,
see.
right?
Yeah.
And I said to him, is that enough? And he said, oh yeah, I think it'll get me a burger or something. And so we spoke about that afterwards, how fortunate we are, and how, some people really don't even have enough money to buy food. And then we spoke about, this was later in the day. I said to them, because they've practically got everything. Oh, we've gone over our time.
I'm just looking at the time going, we need to have a commercial break. We haven't had one yet. So we're going to have a commercial break. You're watching Spirit Cafe, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience, or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. Contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
Oh my goodness. Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh my gosh, it certainly does. It certainly does. Yeah, I think, we started off the show talking about mass shootings in the US, and we've flipped over to how to, I think we've gotten from here's a problem that we see in the world, but let us go back to how it is that it's created and how it can be solved, I think. And consciousness is the answer.
Mhm.
It's like teaching our children from a very young age and beginning to model behavior
Mhm.
that I remember with my youngest son when he was about 12 or 13. We were at a grocery store and I had to go to the customer service desk to do something. Can't remember what it was. I had to buy something there.
Mhm.
And so I paid with cash and they gave me, like, I paid with a $10 bill. They gave me change for a 20.
Mhm.
And so I stopped the person. I said, "You're giving me too much change back." And she, "No, no, no, I'm sure it's right." And I said, "You're giving me too much change." And I gave her $10 back. And she goes, "You gave me a 10." I said, "I gave you a 20." That's what I had on me was a 20. So I wrote down my phone number. I said, "I tell you what, when you get to the end of the day, if
Mm.
your till is out by
Mhm.
this $10, then you give me a call and I'll come and collect it." But I said, "I know what I gave you." And
Mhm.
my son looked at me afterwards and he went, "Wow, mom, like,
Mm.
why don't you just take the $10?"
Mhm.
And I went, "No, no, no. The cost of that is way beyond what I'm willing to
Right.
experience. Because whatever you take from society,
Mhm.
you've got to repay it.
Mhm.
And it's usually multiplied.
Yeah.
The exchange of energy isn't necessarily dollar for dollar. And that's actually the good news because what you put out comes back
Yeah.
multiplied. So
Mhm.
let's be practicing random acts of kindness. Let's be loving to one another. Let's
Mhm.
operate from integrity to the best of our ability. And let us learn to love one another. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I agree. It was just making me think of there was just recently a Joy conference online, and they launched a movie about, like a documentary about the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa, and their wonderful, playful, joyful relationship that they have, or had.
yeah.
Unfortunately, Desmond Tutu is no longer with us, or fortunately. I mean, it's neither good nor bad, right?
Yeah, just
Um,
is what it is.
it just is what it is. But, that's one of the ways that I try and shift my energy is by watching things like that, watching
Yes.
uplifting, affirmative documentaries or talks, or just listening to
Yeah.
something online, because that helps me shift my energy from a space that might not be ideal, which you
Yeah.
know happens often.
Well, it's, in our teaching, it's like change your thinking, change your life,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes we just need something funny to help us change our thinking. My husband likes to share puns with me. So he gets them on Twitter and he'll go, "Oh, oh, oh, got something for you," right? And then he'll recite, um, what was the one yesterday? Uh, 10 plus 10 and 11 plus 11 are the same. And I went, "Oh," and he goes, "Yeah, 10 plus 10 is 20 and 11 plus 11 is 22."
Oh, my grandkids will love that.
It's just, he finds these little things that are a little bit quirky, and just out of the blue, he'll toss it out to me. Or, these mind quizzes, these little things that, it's like train is traveling this fast in one direction and, the wind is going in the other direction, electric train, which way is the smoke going? It's like little funny things like that. Well, or where did they bury the survivors if there was an accident right at the border?
Mhm. Oh my
You know, it's
gosh.
those little things that, we make
Yeah,
assumptions about
yeah,
what
yeah,
what actually was said rather
yeah,
than listening intently.
yeah.
And he can't catch me very often on those. My daughter tries to as well, and it's like, yeah, good luck with that, because I've been reading those for years, and I like the little twist. But I think the more we can play, the more we can laugh, the more we can be forgiving of each other and ourselves, because I really believe it's hurt people who hurt people.
Exactly.
So when we look at the things we do and the way that we do them, if we would just check in, we might find that we are acting out of a previous experience or a previous pain that we've had, that if we healed that, we could maybe respond in a different way to the people in front of us, which would then change our world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because if there were less hurt people, there would be less hurting, right? And so that means that if we each love ourselves, there'll be more loving.
Yeah. It's why I don't really agree with anti-bullying campaigns, because somebody has to be bad and wrong. And if somebody has to be bad and wrong, then isn't that kind of bullying in and of itself?
Yeah.
So I look at children who bully, and more often than not, you'll find that they've been bullied at home, or, somebody is abusing them, and then they're exerting their power over someone else to get a sense of a sense of their own power. But if we just teach them, you are powerful, and it's not about anybody else. You of yourself are powerful. You of yourself are unique and special. And there's only one of you, and that is essential in our world at this point in time, that you bring your gifts, whatever those are. And I think the more we can instill that in our children, or if we notice that our children are being bullied or that they are bullying, then let's sit down and start having some conversations and retrain, reprogram, I think love is the answer, right? I think sometimes we just have to grab our kids up and give them the biggest hug they've ever had, even if they don't want to feel it.
Yeah.
And
so,
yeah.
Yeah. And, that leads me to thinking and going back to these shootings and the shooters and, having compassion. I know that these are devastating and horrific events.
Yeah.
And if you go back and you look into the history of the perpetrators, the people that are causing the harm, you're going to find that they were bullied, or they weren't valued, or they were made to feel less than. There's always going to be something there that drove them to do that, because of something that they have taken in, and that has driven them to feel so bad about themselves that they need to react outwardly in that way.
Yeah. So it points to a systemic problem, because I don't think that should get them off the hook, but it definitely helps us to understand what we need to be doing from the beginning, right? Like, it's how are we training our children? What messages are we giving them at home, in school, wherever we are? What are the messages that are going out? Fiona just mentioned, as a child moving from Australia to the US, she was bullied, but didn't understand bullying. Yeah, it's like people are attacking, and then, we're wondering, like, well, what is it about me?
Yeah.
Why am I so bad or awful or whatever that you would attack me? I remember getting beaten up in grade 7. 4 girls attacked me. Girls I had never, ever met. I had no idea who they were. And they had ripped out patches of my hair, and like they just beat me like so bad. And it's like, I look at stuff like that, and it's like, why?
Yeah. And yeah, so going back to what you said, it doesn't excuse that, what happened absolutely at all, but it does behoove us to look back at the systemic issues that are creating these things. Because if we look what you're talking about as well leads on to another topic, and that is children or youth who have been bullied and can't take it and take their own lives, right?
Or they
Because
come to school with a gun and shoot it up.
exactly. So these are the effects of
That's right.
the issue. These are the symptoms of the
Yeah.
systemic problem.
Well, and I think that's the thing that what I love about New Thought is that we actually go back to first cause. What is the first cause of the effect that I'm seeing? Because if I'm looking at the effect, it's a little bit like putting a Band-Aid on a severed carotid artery. It's not going to do any good. What I have to do is go back and go, now what, and I mean, I can't change that incident, but maybe by creating new programming for schools or new programming on television, just watch television for a while. And I mean, it makes perfect sense why there's so much anger. It seems like so much of the programming is geared to that. Even I was horrified when my young daughter was watching some of the children's programming, and mothers and daughters were behaving in a competitive manner.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, why are you competing with your child
Mm.
to be the best girl, or like
Mm.
what? And this is children's programming.
Mm.
And I'm thinking we have to look at what it is we allow our children to hear and to watch. But then once they go to school, we are kind of out of the picture for a number of hours every day. And we don't know what it is that the teachers are saying or doing unless our children come home and report to us. And unfortunately, a lot of parents don't believe their kids. They believe the teacher.
That's another issue.
Big issue.
Yeah.
Big issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My daughter's school doesn't love me very much because, well, I get along with them fine, but I think what they don't like is that I always take her side,
Mm.
and I will fight them tooth and nail on it.
Mm.
I don't care what you say. Well, kids lie. Yeah. And my kid, does she lie sometimes? Yeah, probably. I think all do. However, if she's done something offensive or wrong, she takes responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And not once she's been called on it. I've seen her do something wrong and go to the office and tell the principal, I did this and I shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So don't tell me that my kid is saying she didn't do something that she did, because that's not her. And I think sometimes as parents, we want to, weigh it out, right? Like, what are you actually doing? And what level of trust do we have with our children? And have we been willing to hear them make mistakes without attacking them for it?
Yeah.
And I think that's why my daughter will, take responsibility for stuff, because she never gets in trouble for telling the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We deal with whatever, but you're not going to get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like,
And it's the same thing as the way schools respond to children's behavior, right? I mean, that's creating, to me, that's really creating pain and harm and confusion and so many things, that our children really needn't be experiencing. And it's because of things like liability, right? They don't want to be liable. So rather than, really care and take care of that child, hands off. Somebody else must deal with it. Call the police. Or, in the good old days, it was like sit down and have a conversation with the parents, with the kids. That really happens anymore.
no.
Only after it's been addressed in such a negative way.
Well, and the disparity between how girls are treated and boys are treated is, I heard of a girl in my daughter's school who had been raped by another student, and this student is still in the school. Didn't get kicked out. It's a he said, she said thing. It's like, no, you can't do that. And this year, she ended up in the same classroom
Oh my gosh.
with him.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Talk about
how can you do that?
Yeah.
Like that kid, and the thing is, like when it was brought up, it's like, well, you know, I mean, you know, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, you know, we can't, it's like, whoa, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But to put them in the same class,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
there's so much systemic change that needs to happen, and it has to start when they're little wee.
It has to start when they're little wee, and it has to start with us as parents, as grandparents, you know, as healing the hurt and the harm that we've experienced in our own lives.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, absolutely. And you know, I feel like I really feel like you should actually pray us out with an affirmative prayer.
Ah, I can do that.
Thank
I
you.
can do that.
Been a
Well, let
heavy
us join together.
conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Let us join together in consciousness as we close out today's Spirit Cafe. And what I know is that there's a power for good in the universe, that it's infinite, creative, and intelligent. It's everywhere present, it's all knowing, it's all powerful. And so it's fully present here and now as each one of us. And I know for our world at large that there is something exciting and delightful, beautiful, and remarkable that's occurring. There's a shifting in consciousness, which is expansive, which is permeating the very cellular structure of each and every one of us, causing greater joy, peace, and happiness in our world of affairs. And that each child is seen as a gift and a blessing, that educators acknowledge this gift, that parents acknowledge this gift, and that we as people acknowledge our own gifts and talents moment by moment, day by day. That something remarkable occurs as a result of love being the answer to every dilemma, that we go back to cause always, and beginning there, we begin to shift consciousness, change direction, and produce peace, love, and joy at every point in space. So my heart is filled with gratitude. Gratitude for this discussion, gratitude for this moment, gratitude for this day, that life is in a transformative process and the change is for good and more good and more good, always getting better. So filled with grace and gratitude, love and light, I release these ideas into the law of mind, knowing it is all done, that beauty reigns supreme. And I let that be the truth. And so it is. And on that note, have a beautiful, beautiful week, everyone. I love you. We send our blessings to everyone. Final thoughts, Cheryl?
Yeah, just you know, send love and light to those that are suffering, the families and the loved ones that are left behind, and just hold them in your hearts with real peace, love, and wishing them grace during this really challenging time.
And that we not only hold love in our hearts for people who've been harmed and their families and friends, but also for the perpetrators and their family and friends. All of life is impacted by this. So let us hold in our mind and heart that love really is the answer, and that we need to find a way to heal some of this injury that has been occurring, and then the challenges that come from it. So let love be leading the way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rippy.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl. And Fiona and everybody else who's watching, thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate you. And we'll be back here next week. This is Spirit Cafe saying adieu.
Ciao for now.
Ciao for now.
It's a sure thing. Change, change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things, the things you look